Okay, hi everybody. I wanted to make this is a little bit of a painting video and a little bit of talking about the Janissaries because I've been thinking about this, the way some of the miniatures for the Janissaries are sculpted by some manufacturers, because it shows them with what they call a campaign uniform, which is like a plain turban and like more, I guess, regular, Turkish, Ottoman Turkish, clothes. And I've been trying to figure out what the source of this is, this notion of it, that it was the campaign uniform, because I can say by now I've looked at quite a few Ottoman manuscripts with illustrations, military illustrations. I've looked at a lot of European costume books or books with illustrations. And like a lot of the ranges, like I said, they have these two uniforms, and I seem to have found where this could come from. So I found a website that shared a lot of European costume books and kind of like that do all kind, like not just Ottoman military, but all kinds of Ottoman illustrations. And there's one that has a depiction of Janissaries, of a Janissary in the sort of classic uniform. So like this, this is what I painted this evening. I finished this guy, and then I painted up this guy. So making good progress with this unit. And then I found one of these European costume books that shows another one that says Janissary in everyday clothing. I think I'll make a follow-up video to this to show the pages. The website was called Janisary Archives, I think, and he was blog is in English, but it was by a Turkish author. He posted up the links to the sources, which is really nice. Although if you go look for it, a lot of the links don't work anymore to the source text, but he has the pictures, at least, of some of the pages of the books. So, I think I still have to research this more, so this is just me kind of talking about investigating this. So I think some of the miniatures companies have seen those images and then taken this to be like, oh, that must have been the campaign dress. They wouldn't have possibly worn this into combat, later on. Could be, that could be, but I'm looking for like an actual depiction of like an Ottoman army actually on campaign dressed like that. I did look quickly through my shelves to see if I had anything like that. And I do have this English translation of well, like it says a military memoir of a Janissary that took part in the Pruth River campaign of 1711. So that was when the Ottomans turned back Frederick the Great. And the editor of this edition did include some images of the Ottoman army, but he mostly doesn't. There's no Ottoman depictions of Janissaries during the campaign itself. So this is much earlier, from the 16th century. And I think a lot of the pictures in this come from this festival book that I've actually made a video about, going through the paintings in it, the Surname Vebi. And in that, the Janissaries still have this kind of uniform, the classic uniform. So what I think could have happened with these costume books, that when they were done in the 18th century, and some of them early 19th century, I think a lot of these artists were meeting people that were Janissaries in terms of having the status, but they were not actually soldiers, and a lot of them were not doing any kind of fighting, even part-time. So I will read a little bit of this, because this this lays it out nicely, this book. This is indispensable, I think, Virginia Aksan, Ottoman Wars, 1700 to 1870, because she discusses an issue in Ottoman history that I think is confusing because it hasn't quite filtered through the to like the popular kind of books. So let me find a good spot. I won't read because she has like a chapter about the military system. Yeah, and so she talks about the conscription, because this is like something that changed a lot, actually. So the Janissary system was originally organized by the conscription and forced conversion of young non-Muslim men, known as the depiction. New recruits were added to the Ajami Olan Corps, essentially the reserve for Janissary Corps, and used to top up Janissary numbers as necessary. Manumission was automatic upon ceremonial admission to the Janissaries. Until 1600, the Ottoman army and palace bureaucracy were drawn almost entirely from the source, from the lowest foot soldier to the Grand Vizier. By 1700, however, the Devshirme was finished as a means of recruitment. One of the last Devshirme-style roundups was in 1666, when 300 to 320 youths were reputedly gathered from the European territories. Official records indicate that in 1687, only 130 new Janissaries were added to the corps in the traditional manner, promoted from within the Ajami Olans. These numbers are insignificant for the campaigns that preoccupied the Ottomans in that period. In other words, the military slave system had long since been abandoned as the chief source of Janissary recruits. Pressure from within the ranks of the regiments to admit outsiders, mostly Muslim-born, sometimes children of the corps itself, had in fact gradually replaced what were no doubt much resisted and less productive roundups. I'll just pause for a minute just to recognize, I do a lot of this Ottoman stuff, and not to be too serious, but this was not a nice system, for a lot of people. And, being forcibly conscripted into, I think, any army, especially when you're a child, is not fun, and to say the least. But anyway, I'm not going to fixate on that too much. The central dilemma of the Ottoman state for the next century was how to contain the size of the Imperial Infantry Corps, whose members, initially deployed beyond Istanbul to the provinces to quell rebellion, merged with and contested the administrations of both local and Ottoman officials. And I'll just pause there again just to explain. So in many places, the Ottomans just retained whatever local administration there was. They didn't interfere with that in every place necessarily. Okay, continuing. Janissary elites, as part of powerful local households, dot the landscape of the late 18th century. Yet the dynasty still had to mobilize effective fighting forces for the far-distant seasonal and siege warfare characteristic of the age, and maintain a series of fortresses along the north frontier. As a tightly controlled recruitment system fell into destitute, other means of recruitment and retention had to be employed. The dilemma was not entirely the issue of payment, discipline, and training, always offered as causes of discontent by Janissary rebels themselves. First and foremost, to be a Janissary was to enter tax-free status. All those in the military were exempt from taxation. Discontent was equally a reflection of challenging power structures, the rise of competing households, and the challenge to the privileged position of the Janissary. The Janissary barracks, organized as ojaks, literally hearths, symbols of the kitchen, the great soup cauldrons, the ceremonial meals shared with the Sultan or substitute, the Grand Vizier on the eve of battle, continued to symbolize the patrimony of the Ottoman dynastic household. The demand for accession gifts from any new Sultan signaled the voluntary submission of the new sovereign by his unruly children, the Janissaries. Yet by 1700, there were reproductions of such patrimonial households with their own armies in all the major fortress cities and towns of the Northern Empire. The southern frontier, i.e. the largely Arab and Kurdish territories of the empire, as we shall see, operated somewhat differently. The assumption of political power by increasingly autonomous imperial troops is a constant refrain of latter-day Ottoman history. Belonging to the Janissaries became an entitlement and an honorific. Extra privileges accorded the corps included annual allotments for uniforms, incentive bonuses before and after battles, healing money for meritorious battle rewards, and money for retirees and widows. Such entitlements were regularly distributed to member of the corps in its heyday and continued to be part of the demands of the 18th century. The Janissaries retained the status of a privileged caste or Praetorian Guard long after their usefulness on the battlefield had declined. Individual regiments developed an esprit de corps that resembled an extended family. To encourage participation in the campaigns, provincial governors promised registration in the corps. Artisans of all kinds found it convenient to become attached to the corps, as noted by Raymond and others, for physical and economic protection. Taught in the Crimea as French consul, so this is a Frenchman named Baron de Tott who does some, I think he's becomes a technical advisor. I actually don't know the 18th century stuff as well, but you can look him up. Pretty famous otherwise. Okay, continuing. Was made an honorary member of the corps in Perekop in 1770, a common practice of the period. By the time Thornton was writing in the early decades of the 19th century, and just prior to the official elimination of the Janissaries in 1826, who they were and what they had become was difficult to determine. So this is important. This is what I'm trying to get at, because the institution is not static. So keep going with Professor Aksan's book. The surviving Janissary rolls are a reminder of a well-documented problem of controlling registration of the famed corps. For example, in 1688, the rolls were reduced by 20,000 names. Again, in 1771, 30,000 names were stripped from inaccurate, often corrupted registers, to mention only two examples. In reality, reforming Grand Viziers had always to contend with inflated muster rolls, often benefiting themselves from pocketing salaries of non-existent soldiers. Sultan and Grand Vizier alike faced increasing debt burden, not just of army wages, but also the aforementioned accession gift, would have become the obligatory contractual agreement between the Janissaries and any new sultan who took the throne. The scale of that one-time payout simply ballooned. Uzun Çarşılı gives several examples. In 1687, 4,500 kesse were distributed. Roughly one-third came from the roughly one-third came from the Sultan's inner treasury, and two-thirds from the annual Egyptian tribute to Istanbul. At Ahmed II's accession, so it would be 1691-95, because of the war, that would be the Great Turkish War, so the war with the Holy League after the Vienna siege. Instead of a 2 akçe increase to salary and a 3,000 akçe gift, 6 kurush, or 720 akçe total, was distributed to each of 17,000 Janissaries with a promise of the remainder when they returned home. Sarı Mehmed Pasha, chief financial officer 6 times between 1703 and 1716, was said to have melted the palace silver to make up the accession payment for Ahmed III, reigned 1703-30. Mahmud I, 1730-54, distributed 2,930 kesse akçe. Obviously, this was a ruinous policy which fell by the wayside as the economic crisis deepened at the end of the century. But the payment for valor, special duties, captives, wounds, and numbers killed in battle continued until the mid-19th century. The Janissaries embodied a pre-modern social welfare system which extended throughout Ottoman society. Small wonder then that there was a clamor to join the ranks as volunteers and a vigorous resistance to change. And then this part is, I think, more related to this issue of the clothing and who people like Europeans seeing them, what this would actually mean. Seeing beyond the Janissaries has been one of the largest challenges to traditional Ottoman historiography, especially in the 18th century period, when they seemed to be everywhere. For most of the principal campaigns, however, the Palace Corps represented only 1/5 of the assembled forces, which were overwhelmingly composed of cavalry rather than infantry, as our period opens. For the campaigns of the second half of the 18th century, the Janissary Corps had to be rebuilt by adding raw recruits on the march. So it's kind of long-winded. Maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. But what I'm thinking is, what my theory is that this thing of the campaign dress may not have really been a true like campaign outfit. That these were, artists going there and they meet someone that is a Janissary, or they're told they're a Janissary and they're just wearing their regular clothing, and then they draw that. Although if there's other depictions, I'd like to see that. I'd be interested in seeing that, because I'm trying to find ones, especially more so like in this the period of like the Great Turkish War up to about 1720, which is kind of the limit of what I mainly focus on in my research and stuff. But I just have not seen this campaign dress yet in an Ottoman depiction. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe they wouldn't have drawn them like that. I'm not sure. But anyway, I know this may have been kind of not very well structured, but I hope you at least learned something. And if you and I will say again, I really recommend this book. Professor Aksan is an expert in this period for Ottoman military history, and it's also like a really nice to read. So obviously I read quite a lot of it, and I think there's a new edition of it out actually that goes a little bit further, but I haven't checked on that edition yet. And it's also has really valuable endnotes at the end of every chapter. So it's really good, especially if you're interested in obviously the wars with Russia in the 18th century, and a lot of that stuff. She also wrote another book that you'll have to go on Libgen, because it's a really expensive book by Brill Publishers to get it on PDF. To get it in PDF, go on Libgen. But it's about a Ottoman statesman who visited Prussia in the 18th century during Frederick the Great. So it's really interesting. That book is really interesting. I've read that before, and the guy she writes about is really interesting. And then it talks about the 18th century and Frederick the Great, but from a different point of view. Okay, all right, I'll close that out here. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And just quickly, I think I'll finish this unit soon. I made pretty good progress today, and I'll get the rest of these done. I've got quite a lot from this box set. And last but definitely not least, my wife ordered me some stuff from Khorasan for my birthday, so I'm looking forward to that. I already know what it is. I know what it is, but I think I'll keep it as a surprise, because I'm excited to open it up and show you guys. So, but it's a great gift. So, all right, I'll close that out there, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.